Hello, I'm Dr. Mikey Mewborn, and this is Church Ministry. Today we're looking at the topic, Administering the Office. Now this is a great topic for us to look at because we're focusing in on the operations of the church offices, or what happens within the church offices. Now some churches have, of course, a pastor, and then they might have someone who's like a receptionist or a secretary or ministry assistant. And then some churches have other offices that are filled as well, such as a finance secretary or a church administrator, and then on and on. But however you look at the church, there are important aspects to how churches run or how they function, what's really going on within the office space. So how are visitors treated? How are people taken care of? And how are correspondence done? And so there should be policies and procedures for all these types of things, and we're going to look at that today. Okay, it's good to be with you. Let's begin our study. Hello, I'm Dr. Mewborn, and this is Church Ministry. Today we're looking at the topic, Administering the Office. We're getting our outline notes from Robert Welch's book, Church Administration. It's so good to be with you. Let's begin our study. As we jump into the topic of church administration, I want to begin by looking at a verse or passage that is also given to us at the beginning of the chapter in Robert Welch's book, Luke 1:1-4. Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the things that have been accomplished among us, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word have delivered them to us, it seemed good to me also, having followed all things closely for some time past, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, that you may have certainty concerning the things you have been taught. This is a wonderful passage because Luke is writing here, and he's saying that I'm giving you an orderly account of things that took place throughout the life of Jesus Christ. Right at the beginning of the life of Jesus Christ, all the way through the crucifixion, through the resurrection. And so he's giving an orderly account. And if you can read the book of Luke in the original text, in the Greek New Testament, you notice that he writes with precision. He writes in a very strong technical way that speaks of things happening in an orderly way. And just what he says here in verses 1-4, he does. He provides that throughout this incredible book. It's a wonderful, helpful resource for all of us to know what took place in the time of Christ. You say, well, why does that matter for us? Well, because in church administration, it's important that everything is done in an orderly fashion, that things are done with policies and procedures and certain processes that are helpful and consistent with the heart of the church. And so we're going to look at some of that today. When we talk about church administration or administering the office, we're going to look at the church office. Number one, it is a place where organization comes together. So in the church office, we would say that's where the business side of things are sometimes. Of course, on Sunday mornings, you're going to have more of a worship experience or worship event, as some churches might call it. But on Monday through Friday, let's say, you're going to come together as a staff and you're going to build what the organization is really all about. And that's when a lot of the business side of the church is going to be executed. And so that's what we're looking at, number one. Number two, the church office is the communication hub of the church or organization. This is very important because everyone that's in the church office needs to know what's going on, because whether it's the mail coming in, whether it's an email coming through, or a telephone call coming through, people must be informed to give answers that need to be given. And the staff needs to be well informed, along with ministry assistants or secretaries or whoever's involved in the process of corresponding with church leaders or with laity. It's important for everyone to know what's going on, and the church office will be a hub for that. Okay. Then number three, the plans of the church or nonprofit organization are formalized in the arena of an office structure. And so in churches, it may be that a church has a building or facility that they meet in, and in that church facility or in that church building, that's where there will be offices where a lot of the business takes place. And so those conference rooms, those pastors' pastor offices, those places of meeting, that's where there's going to be a lot of conversation of how things should be run and how plans are built. Then number 4, the church office is a place of counseling and where needs are met. And so church offices is that place that counseling can take place in. And of course, you will see a lot of that, maybe even discipleship. Number 5 is a gathering place, a place for fellowship. So we see there that church events, church ministry activities, or maybe a worship service that's going to happen within the church, but also in conference rooms and in conversations and the church staff coming together. Those types of things will also be done in the church, and that means it's a gathering place. That's where we're coming together. That's where we're learning from one another, and it's a great place of fellowship as well. Okay? Now, how do you staff the office adequately? The book that we're looking at, given to us by Robert Welch, he says that there's several people that need to be involved in staffing the office adequately, and he names them this way: office administrator, then you have receptionist, possibly a secretary in the church, financial secretary, and records secretary. Now, one of these people could fill all of these jobs. It could be the office administrator that does all of that. Or it could be 2 people that are involved in this. The office administrator oversees everything, but then the secretary is the one who's doing a lot of the filing and keeping records of things. Maybe it's a committee that's making this happen. So maybe a committee is overseeing the financial side of things. Maybe it's a committee overseeing the records within the church. And so whatever it is, those churches have to function a certain way, and these positions have to be filled. So it's not that there's maybe one person in that position. Maybe it's a team of people, and they're working together as volunteers to make sure that the church is being truly administered to. I know it sounds interesting to say it that way, but that the church is receiving everything that it needs so that it can file correctly, so they can have correspondence that are done in a timely manner, as well as making sure that people are counseled as needed. And so there's all types of things that will happen. So this church needs to be staffed adequately, and that's a major aspect. I want to show you this picture. This is kind of just a view of or a picture of a church office, maybe a secretary's desk, or maybe this is a ministry assistant's desk. But what we're looking at here is kind of an outdated type of look. You've got an older desk there. You have a computer. It looks like a fax machine. Got printing machine maybe in the back, whatever that is, or folding machine. I don't really know. But what you have here is, this could be a reception area. And this is not that welcoming, okay? So what you need to do is have a place that's more welcoming, have a place that meets the needs of anybody that comes in, and of course a great communication hub. So if you want to be appealing to people that are visiting the church, you might have to change the furniture. You might have to change the paint on the walls. You might have to change the pictures, all those types of things, because this is what we look at, and it's not as hip or not where it maybe needs to be for people that are coming to our churches these days. When they're thinking about coffee shops, and they're thinking about nice stylistic type of places to eat, they're going to look for that. And if the church doesn't meet some of those needs, they're going to say, this is outdated. They don't speak to me. I need to find a better place, or a more modern place that's going to be relevant to me. And so sometimes optics do matter, and that might be an important thing to look at there. Just kind of a thought. All right. Then we get into church manuals. Establish a church office procedures manual. You have general office expectations. You have standardized operations, different aspects. The book talks about this a lot, of how those expectations and those operations look. Who is answering the phone? What is that like? How does the correspondence go out? Who creates that? How are the records being kept? Who is the one that's reaching out to a guest that came in? Who's filing the information that we've reached that guest, and now we are looking forward to meeting them? Who's taking care of the request for somebody to be baptized, and who's doing all those types of things? So there has to be general office expectations that are done by answering phone calls and making making sure that everything is in order in the office, but then there's other things that are important for the role of a ministry assistant, and those need to be spelled out very clearly. Then we get into create a desk manual for each office position. This is important. It aids in the training of new employees. So if a new employee comes in and they don't know what to do, they just have a new position, they have to learn. Well, it's wonderful if they come in and they have a manual to go by that guides them in what to do throughout the year. It helps with evaluations and possible promotions as well, and that's important. So we continue on, office correspondence. This is a major topic for us today because we have to make sure that correspondence that go from the church to people are correspondence that are done correctly. They look right. They have the right letterhead. They have the right numbers, the right information on the letterhead. It looks professional. When people get it, they say, wow, this is done well. So document preparation, making sure that things look right. Also, there's elements of good correspondence, and Robert Welch gives 6 elements of good correspondence. He names them communicative, clear, concise, complete, correct, and courteous. He kind of calls them the 6 C's, or the 6 elements of good correspondence. It's important that we say what we need to say in a clear and concise way, in a correct way, a complete way, and a very courteous way. And that's how you correspond with people that are coming to church. Also, composing an effective letter or memorandum. How do you do it? How do you make sure it's right? Do you use softwares that are out there like Grammarly to compose an effective letter, one that's going to get people to move or make an action or do an action, bringing about change in a certain area? Well, there's going to have to be a letter that's composed correctly. If it's a general letter to somebody who's visited the church, well, what's going to be the effective way of reaching them and getting them to come back the next week? How do you do that? Or in your church, do letters seem to be outdated? If they are, then what is your communication? Is it an email? Is it some form of text message? What is that correspondence? Is it effective? So look at those types of things. And then document management. How are these things that you're writing, how do we know that you've done them? There are a lot of softwares out there, church software programs, that are helpful in keeping track of what you write, when you write it, how often you've done something, keeping up with the different dates within that person, whether it's the date of their salvation, the date of their baptism, maybe the anniversary date, birth dates, things like that. It keeps up with all that type of thing. So there's software programs that'll do that for you, but there has to be a way to make sure that we keep track of all of those documents within the church. Communication procedures. Let's talk about internal communication procedures. We talk about mail procedures. There's a way that mail comes and goes. Who is the one who checks it when it comes in? Who is the one that's going to decide where the mail correspondence goes? And so you need somebody to do that, and then you need almost like a timeline of when things are going to be responded to, depending on what they are. So that's important. Then telephone procedures. How do you answer the phone? How do you respond to people? What is the way that you can kind of guide people into different offices that need be? So if it's a question for the pastor, is that going to go directly to him, or is it going to go to his secretary, or is it going to go to somebody else? Maybe it shouldn't even go to the pastor. Maybe it should go to a youth pastor, whatever it might be. But you need to have good telephone procedures. And then electronic and PDA communication. So whether we're talking about emails, we're talking about some kind of text messaging, we're talking about a conference type of call, whatever it might be, you need to have good procedures in the way that you do that. And then office procedures. There's ways that offices can be run correctly. Church office personnel should be inviting, helpful, and informed. Church offices should be fully equipped for ministry. It's important that if we're going to ask a pastor to write, let's say, curriculum for a Wednesday night class or for a Sunday school class, or maybe he is going to be responsible for building his PowerPoint slides or keynote slides or whatever those are called, then he needs to have what he needs to be able to do that. He needs to have the right equipment to produce what he needs to produce. And so that's when the church comes in. The church is going to have to buy maybe letterhead for him if he's going to write letters and print those out. They're going to have to purchase for him envelopes to be able to mail those. There's going to be expectations with maybe it's with a certain type of phone. Maybe he would rather just have a phone that dials people, doesn't really do anything but text and calls people. Well, he needs a smartphone because he's going to be answering emails throughout his day. Maybe he's going to be a part of this church software program, and he's going to need that smartphone. So if the church is asking a pastor to do these things, then they should provide for that, and they should be equipped. If he's going to be doing a lot of counseling, he needs the time to do that. He also needs the right setup in his office and the right type of, he needs a certain amount of chairs and things like that, and a meeting place. So all those things matter and needs to be fully equipped for that. Okay, and then as continuing on, we look at computer management systems. And this is kind of focusing more on assessing the needs, assessing software applications, assessing hardware needs, compliance issues, and then church management software issues. And there's a lot of different aspects that people today deal with within the church world or church offices. What are the needs that the church office has? And if there is a lot of them, for instance, a secretary cannot fax something unless they probably have a fax machine or they have a way of doing that. You can't scan in some kind of document and then send it to somebody unless you have a scanner. So there's certain things that are needed to be able to do a job well. And so we need to, as maybe administrators or getting the administrators in the church to do certain things, such as what are those needs? Maybe there's a survey that goes out. Maybe there is just an open door policy with a church administrator and say, I need these things. This software is going to work well for me. I need these hardware things. I'm dealing with these issues. How do we do this? And so people need to know the people to go to get what they need, and then also they will need the equipment for those needs as well. All right. Well, this has been Administering the Office, making sure the office is equipped so that it can be used for the glory of God. So it's good to be with you today. God bless you, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye. All right, that concludes our study about administering the office. This is a great study for us to look at. I know you've learned some things through this study. It's so good to be with you today. We'll talk to you soon. God bless you, and bye-bye.